создано по материалам книги A Study in Scarlet. B1-B2. Учебное аудиоиздание. Автор Артур Конан Дойл. Издательство Direct Media. Озвучено с помощью aibooks.ru.
Chapter 1. Mr. Sherlock Holmes. In 1878, I became a doctor in London and went to Netley for army training. Soon I was sent to India, but before I arrived, the Second Afghan War had begun. I followed my regiment to Kandahar and started my work there. During a battle at Maiwand, I was shot in the shoulder. My orderly, Murray, saved me by putting me on a horse and taking me back to safety. After that, I was sent to a hospital in Peshawar. I began to recover but then caught a serious fever. I became very weak, so doctors sent me back to England to rest for 9 months. I had no family in England and little money, so I moved to London. I stayed at a small hotel, but it was too expensive. One day at the Criterion Bar, I met Stamford, an old friend. He told me about someone who wanted to share a flat because it was too costly alone. The man's name was Sherlock Holmes. Stamford said Holmes was clever but strange. He studied chemistry and anatomy, but not like normal students. He had unusual habits and knew many odd things. I told Stamford I didn't mind strange people, and we went to meet Holmes in the lab. He was excited because he found a test that shows blood even in very small amounts. He explained it to me with great energy. We spoke and agreed to share rooms. Holmes warned me that he sometimes worked with chemicals, played violin, and was quiet for days. I said that was fine, and we decided to visit the rooms on Baker Street the next day. Chapter 2. The Science of Deduction. The next day, Holmes and I visited the rooms at 221B Baker Street. They were bright, clean, and had 2 bedrooms and a nice sitting room. We liked the place and decided to take it. That evening I moved in, and the next morning Holmes brought his things. Holmes was quiet and easy to live with. He had regular habits and usually got up early. He often went to the laboratory or took long walks. Sometimes he stayed home all day, lying on the sofa without speaking. I once thought he might use drugs, but I saw that he lived a clean life. I became very curious about him. He wasn't studying medicine or science in the usual way, but he knew many details about chemistry, law, and crime. Still, he knew nothing about politics, literature, or the solar system. Once he told me, "I try to forget useless facts. I want to keep only helpful knowledge in my mind." I didn't understand what kind of work he did until one morning. He was reading a magazine with an article marked in pencil. It said that by looking at small things like a person's hands or clothes, one could tell a lot about them. I laughed and said it was nonsense. Holmes smiled and told me that he wrote the article himself. "It's how I earn money. I'm a consulting detective. When other detectives have problems, they come to me. I help them find the right answer." He then explained how he knew I had come from Afghanistan. I was surprised, but he showed me his logical steps. I was a doctor, had a military look, a suntanned face but pale wrists, a stiff arm, and signs of sickness. All of this pointed to an army doctor from the tropics, most likely Afghanistan. I was amazed and realized I had much to learn about Sherlock Holmes. Chapter 3. The Lauriston Garden Mystery. I was surprised when Holmes guessed that a man on the street was a retired sergeant from the Marines. Later, the man came to our door and gave Holmes a letter. Holmes was right. The man really was a sergeant. I was impressed. The letter was from Inspector Gregson. He wanted Holmes to help with a strange case. A man was found dead in an empty house on his Lauriston Gardens near Brixton Road. There were bloodstains, but no wound on the body. The dead man's name was Enoch J. Drebber from Cleveland, USA. Holmes agreed to visit the house. He said it would be fun, even if the police took the credit. We took a cab and soon arrived at the empty building. Outside it was rainy and gray. People were watching from the street. Holmes didn't go inside. Right away. He slowly walked around the garden and looked carefully at the ground. Then we entered the house and met Gregson and Lestrade, 2 detectives from Scotland Yard. The dead man was lying, on the floor. He looked about 40 years old and had a scared expression on his face. His body showed signs of a struggle, but there were no wounds. Holmes examined everything. Then Lestrade showed us something strange. On the wall, someone had written the word Raish in blood. Lestrade thought it meant a woman named Rachel. Holmes laughed and said, "No, it's German. It means revenge." Holmes used a magnifying glass and tape to measure the room. He spoke little, but I saw he was thinking deeply. Then he gave his opinion. The killer was a tall man, over 6 feet. He smoked a special cigar and wore square-toed boots. The 2 men arrived in a cab. Holmes also said the killer used poison and left the body. Before leaving, Holmes asked for the name of the policeman who first found the body. We decided to visit him next. Chapter 4. What John Rance Had to Tell. It was 1 o'clock when we left the house on Lauriston Gardens. Sherlock Holmes took us to a telegraph office and sent a telegram. Then he called a cab and we went to the address Lestrade gave us. "First-hand evidence is important," he said. "My mind is quite made up, but we should gather all the facts." "You amaze me, Holmes," I replied. "Are you really so sure?" "No room for mistake," he said. "I saw cab tracks near the curb. It hadn't rained until last night, so the cab must have been there then. The horse's hoof marks showed 1 new shoe. This means it came during the night and brought the men to the house." "Simple," I said. "But what about the height of the other man?" "The height can be guessed by a man's stride. His writing on the wall was over 6 feet, which matches his height. His age is clear from how he crossed a puddle, someone young and strong." "The fingernails and cigarette ash?" I asked. "The writing was with a finger, without trimmed nails. The ash was from a special kind of cigar. I have studied cigar ashes and can tell them apart." I was puzzled. How did the men get into an empty house? What about the cab? Driver? Why poison 1 man? Why was a woman's ring there? And the German word, Rach? Holmes smiled. "Good questions. I have some ideas, but details are missing. The word was a trick to mislead the police. It wasn't written by a German, but someone pretending to be one." Our cab stopped in front of a narrow street called Audley Court. We went to house number 46 to find a constable named Rance. He was irritated to be woken up. Holmes gave him a coin to encourage him. Rance started talking. He said his shift was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Everything was quiet until it rained at 1 a.m. He saw a light in the empty house and got suspicious. At first, he thought the owner was checking the drains because the last tenant died of fever from bad drainage. He got scared and went back to the gate to look for others, but he was alone. He entered and saw everything Holmes had already told me. Then he went outside to alert his partner. Just then, he saw a drunken man singing loudly. Holmes asked about the man's appearance but didn't get useful information. Rance didn't realize the man was important to the case. Holmes was upset. The man Rance saw was key to solving the mystery. Holmes knew he'd catch the culprit eventually. As we went back, Holmes told me the ring was why the man returned. He planned to use it to catch him. We decided to have lunch before attending a concert. On the way, Holmes hummed, happy with his work. Chapter 5. Our advertisement brings a visitor. After our busy morning, I was too tired and lay down on the sofa to rest. Although I tried to sleep, I couldn't. My thoughts were filled with strange ideas about the case we were investigating. The face of the murdered man, Enoch J. Drebber, haunted me. His evil look made me feel grateful to whoever removed him. But I knew justice was important. Regardless of his character, Holmes believed Drebber might have been poisoned. I remembered Holmes sniffing his lips, likely detecting something unusual. But if it wasn't poison, what killed him? There were no wounds or signs of struggle. Whose blood was on the floor? Holmes seemed confident, suggesting he had a theory. He returned very late, long after the concert ended. When he arrived, he discussed music's ancient roots, noticing I was still troubled. He explained he placed an advertisement about a wedding ring found on Brixton Road, using my name to avoid drawing attention. Holmes suspected someone involved in the case would contact us. "Sorry for using your name," Holmes said. "If I used mine, people might interfere." "That's fine," I replied. "But what if someone comes for the ring?" Holmes handed me a ring, saying it was almost identical. He expected the man in the brown coat, or his accomplice, to respond to the ad. Holmes believed this man lost the ring when leaning over Drebber's body and would take any risk to get it back. He'd pretend to be drunk to avoid suspicion and would look for news about the ring in the paper. Holmes was sure he'd come. Soon, Holmes advised me to be ready with my revolver, as the man could be dangerous. When I returned with it, Holmes was playing his violin, confident his theory was right. He had received confirmation from America. "Put your pistol in your pocket and talk to him normally. Leave the rest to me," he instructed. Just then, the doorbell rang. Holmes thought it was our man. As we listened, a surprised look crossed his face. Instead of a dangerous man, a very old woman slowly entered the room. The old woman seemed confused by the sudden brightness and nervously searched her pocket. Holmes looked disappointed, but I struggled to keep a straight face. The woman showed us a newspaper with our ad. She said the ring belonged to her daughter Sally. Her husband was at sea, and she feared what he'd say if Sally lost her ring. "Is that her ring?" I asked. "Thank you," she exclaimed. "Sally will be so happy." I asked for her address, and she said, 13, Duncan Street, Houndsditch. Holmes quickly pointed out that her story didn't match the locations. She corrected herself, giving another address and name. Holmes thought she might actually work for the criminal, and he decided to follow her. He hurried off, watching her from a distance. While waiting for Holmes, I tried to read but couldn't focus. It was midnight before Holmes returned, looking amused and frustrated. He confessed that the old woman had outsmarted him. She had successfully misled both him and the driver. Now it was clear that their suspect had help. Holmes assured me he'd catch them. Eventually, I watched as the cab stopped, and the driver eagerly opened the door, expecting the passenger to come out. But no one was inside. The driver was confused and very upset, swearing loudly. When we asked at number 13, we found out that respectable Mr. Keswick, a paper hanger, lived there, and nobody by the name of Sawyer or Dennis was known. "You don't mean to say," I exclaimed, amazed, "that the frail old woman escaped from the cab while it was moving, without either you or the driver noticing?" "Forget the old woman," Holmes replied quickly. "We were the ones fooled. It must have been a young and clever man in disguise. This shows our suspect has help from some loyal friends. Doctor, you look exhausted. You should get some sleep." I was indeed tired, so I followed Holmes's advice. As I lay in bed, I could still hear the sad sound of his violin, knowing he was deep in thought, trying to solve the mystery.